Welcome to Mum Days, a beautiful collective of mamas and experts sharing wisdom, inspiration, and life hacks to support us on this journey through the hazy days of motherhood. Welcome to this month's episode of What Your Mama Didn't Tell You. And I am joined once again by my amazing sister, Dawn Calvinisti, all the way from Guatemala. And I am thrilled to be able to do this with her on an ongoing basis, mainly because I miss chatting with her on a regular day-to-day chat time. But it's nice to have someone who I count as having been a bit of a mentor and life coach for me. And now she's making it official as a life coach for mamas and just finding ways to live life unapologetically. And I think that is what you are amazing at anyway. So I'm glad that you're here with us and you can help share some of that wisdom that I've got to collect from you. So welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
We are hitting some fun topics today, aren't we? So we are talking about some postpartum things. And so I'm going to throw out some areas that we both have been through and give you a little backstory. So both of us, I mean, Dawn went through many, you can tell more about that, but you went through many years of deciding you weren't ever having children. And I'm pretty sure I was born ready to have children. Like from the moment I knew what a baby was, I was going to have a lot of them. So very different in that way growing up. But she had them first. And I got to experience pregnancy, labor, birth, and all the unknowns that come with that through living vicariously through my sister. So it launched us into a whole career I don't think ever dreamed we would have, right? I mean, did you ever think you'd be a birth coach?
No.
It's so funny to me to think about that. But you were amazing at it, and you're still so gifted at that type of thing. And it was something that we learned because of, I think, really from that experience with your firstborn, going, this is not what we ever learned or anyone ever told me. My mama didn't talk about this because she had 2 C-sections and totally different stories from her. And then, I heard some things from our aunties or maybe from friends, but you really don't always get either the good, solid advice or the nitty gritty. I find like we kind of get the horror stories, right? We kind of get the horrible stuff without the details. Yeah. Like how do you know how bad it is, but how do you fix it? Or the good parts of it, I feel like there's no balance to that. So that's why we're here, because we want to hit some of these topics and talk about what things we didn't know or we wish we had known. So Dawn, let's start with postpartum body.
Yeah. So I don't think I had any clue what a body would look like, especially feel like right after birth. And things like just not even knowing when you go to the bathroom that you feel like your insides may end up in the toilet. Right? Nobody told me that. Nobody told me that things didn't, okay, you have a baby, your body might look different. Maybe things will droop or they won't spring back as much. That you hear. But you don't necessarily hear that you can't even feel muscles anymore. Like you don't know how to tense them or tighten them. Or someone says, well, pull up on your Kegels and you've just had a baby. You're going, I don't think they exist anymore.
Like they fell out when I went to the bathroom.
I am pulling, aren't I? I don't know. Am I pulling? Right. So it's just funny because people don't necessarily talk about those things, almost like labor wasn't already intimate enough and a bunch of people were looking at your parts and all of that, but nobody continues the story then that those parts are different after, and it's okay and it's normal and you don't have to be afraid. I have friends that after, when I was saying my story, then were saying how afraid they were, but nobody ever talks about it.
Yeah. What was one, I remember like it was yesterday when you had your firstborn. What was one thing that you maybe stands out to you that you're like, whoa, like you touched on a bunch of those, but what was something that you were like, I had no clue this would happen?
Yeah, I didn't realize that, so it's totally ridiculous, but I didn't realize my belly would be so lax And that every time I went to breastfeed, I happened to breastfeed, that it would hurt so bad in my belly. And yet I didn't know what was hurting because I couldn't feel any muscles anymore. Like it was just this mushy thing. And yet it caused excruciating pain when I breastfed. So that was something I'd never heard anything about. And I didn't realize at all that I wouldn't know what was there.
I totally agree. And I remember with my first, I mean, mine was a little traumatic, that delivery, but I remember feeling, I probably said it to you too. I was like, I can't even sit up. Like the concept of having no stomach muscles, my lower back just felt like it was breaking. And I remember thinking, no one ever tells you that you feel like you need a support brace, which I then learned about belly binding and how amazing it is after you have a baby. But the other thing I remember was not bringing, well, in my case, I had no clothes with me because it was a strange story. I went home in, hospital gown. But I had no idea that bringing maternity clothes to the hospital was a good idea, because you're not just going to pop back into your pre-pregnancy or maybe your first trimester clothing. And even now, showing my kids, pictures of mom's postpartum, or, when they look at my Instagram account and things that I show them all the time to normalize it for them, always saying, was there another baby in that belly? Is there still a baby in there? Mm-hmm. Nope. That is, you have a baby belly for a while. And I know many moms were surprised by that. And many of our clients, even doula clients, saying, I did not bring the right clothes to go home in. Like, I still need my jogging pants. I still need my maternity pants for a good month or two after, while things are going back to where they belong. So that was a big one for me. Yeah. I'd say another one, if we were talking about body changes, even, I love that you were talking about feeling like things were falling out. Oh my goodness. Having a bowel movement. Like, how do you poop after you push out a baby?
It's terrifying. Like, I remember
tells you these things that when you have to push, especially if you've had a hospital birth, they want to make sure you can have a bowel movement typically before you're released home. Well, no one tells you just how traumatic that could be after a baby. So any tips that you have on that one in particular? I don't, we've learned a few things over the years, but is there anything you can think of that makes that a little less traumatic?
So I'm gonna do two things on this. No one told me about a peri bottle either. Yes. So, like, even for peeing, right? Because it burns and because things are raw down there. And I just remember the nurse handing me this bottle with looked like a squirt bottle to squirt on myself. She had explained. I had no clue what she was giving. I thought it was a drink bottle. Like, I didn't know what she was doing. And she said, just when you go pee, squirt on yourself. And the incredible relief of having that was huge. And yet I had no idea that I would need it. So that was, like, for that part of it was awesome. And then, learning with subsequent kids how you can make it even better. But I think the other thing too with going to the bathroom is understanding, like you need to eat. Like, I actually feared, I remember this with my very first, I feared eating because I was so afraid to go to the bathroom. And yet I knew I had to eat or they weren't going to release me. And just looking at the food, I just kept thinking, but I don't know if I can push that out. Like, I remember that inside me. I know I never said it to you because I was embarrassed. Like, it just felt like how do I explain to you this feeling of I might lose, like, my heart might fall into the toilet. That's how I felt. Like, everything was just loose inside. And so I think since then I realized the one thing that would have been really great to know the first time was just what I ate after. Right. Like, I didn't think about, like, have a smoothie, have something that has, like, some fiber, but that's kind of blended, so that it just doesn't have the traction to be super solid. And because you have been straining and so on, you may have hemorrhoids, right? Again, something I think might have been somewhere in something I read, but didn't really know what that was per se, but just not wanting to strain to have to go, right? So just knowing things that can make that a little safer and more comfortable. Again, not that everything's going to fall out inside. It's just that you feel like
it does. And I remember you telling me that. And as soon as I had my first, I was like, yep, that's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said about the peri bottle, and this is something that I'm passionate about. And as you know, I have a baby store, and that's something I right away started sourcing because I wanted to have peri bottles that people could buy to have at home or to gift to friends. Now that you know, after you hear these episodes with us, you're going to know what to buy your friends for postpartum gifts or for baby gifts.
For sure.
But I remember asking if I could have a peri bottle to take home with my first, and they said no. And I was like, well, you just spoiled me for the first 12 hours. And I was going home early because I wasn't even supposed to be at the hospital. And I thought, you're kidding me. So I snuck it home. I put it in my bag and took it. But then I remember my follow-up with the midwife, it was at your house actually. And I remember asking her, is this like something we can get? And she just said, oh, of course, I'll bring you one. And I'm like, I already have one, but thanks. Nobody tells you can ask for these things or that you should be allowed to take one home. Anyway, I was like, what, are you kidding me? How am I supposed to go home and do this? I have to pee at home. And I had a running 11 stitch. So I definitely needed, that was fun times. Yeah. Good time.
And I think too, like one of the things that was told in my prenatal classes, which was a lifesaver, was to freeze our pads, right? Freeze the maxi pads and put them on just for helping decrease inflammation and comfort and so on. And like that, again, if that hadn't been said in my class, I would have had no idea about that. Yeah.
Peri pads or whatever, popsicle pads. Yeah.
Popsicle pads. Yep.
Oh my goodness. And then, so on that same note, because this is another one that I preach from the hilltops, is what kind of pads you're using postpartum. I mean, when they stick in a big Attends diaper for the first 3 hours or whatever, take it. But to be able to have something that isn't going to cause itching, I had massive allergic reactions to the pads from the hospital that went on for months. And I thought I was losing my mind. I thought something was wrong with me until one of the midwives finally said, you are having a full-blown allergic reaction to the plastics and whatever toxins or whatever are in these pads. So finding something like, if you use a washable, I mean, if you're a super heavy bleeder, then you have to find what works for you. But there are non-toxic options. There are, now we have I use Nick's underwear. They now have a postpartum line. Things like that, just to kind of ease off on putting the plastics and the formaldehyde and the things right against that raw skin. It actually helps slow down your postpartum bleeding in a healthy way too. It helps regulate it better. And it kind of stops some of that other itching and other things that can happen that you didn't know could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. How many people right now are like totally horrified by everything we've just said, and they're pregnant with their first kid? We're sorry, but believe us, you'll be thankful later.
These are things you need to know. We'll do a pregnancy one soon.
That's right.
All good. All right. Now
I just want you all to know I didn't want kids, and once you're pregnant, there's no going back. So we're giving it to you. You can't change it now. You might as well just get the good stuff.
You're in it. We just want to make sure you're covered. You've got facts from these girls. Okay, we've got your back.
Right. Avoid the stuff that we didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because we definitely have more of these conversations now than ever before. Yeah. Like I think back even 17 years to when we were doing this with you the first time. I mean, I think now back to how little we knew, and it's sort of horrifying that you did as well as you did. With each baby you learn, and as time goes on and research advances, if you're willing to hear it, if you're willing to, once you know better, do better, right? That idea, then it does change for you. You have to be adaptable in that way. So I'm glad that we have the ability to have these conversations now so that, our kids will, I mean, my poor children, I'm sure yours are the same. My poor kids know more about birth and postpartum than any 6-year-old know.
Our sons will be educating their wives. So
yes, absolutely. I was like, I have brainwashed them thoroughly. My poor daughter-in-law. I feel sorry for them already. Okay, let's talk about postpartum sex. There was a really funny, somewhere on TikTok or somewhere that I was browsing through as I was scrolling stuff. And it was a really funny one about doctors, your 6-week checkup, right? Doctor or midwife, kind of your release of care checkup, getting the check mark, you're clear to resume sexual activity. And the husband's going like, woohoo, here we go. And the women are like, you're dreaming. And it was this whole concept of, you've got to the 6-week mark, everything's good to go, jump in the bed, right? And have fun. Now, for some women, they're more than ready, and sometimes even before that. But for many, and I think that's a pretty true, I could probably find a statistic on it. For many, it's not. It's nerve-wracking. It can be uncomfortable and even painful. And really, like we just talked about, you feel like your whole insides have been reorganized, which they have, and are shifting still back into position. It took 9 months to move them. all your organs are now not going to magically just pop back where they were within a week or two. So they're slowly going to make their way back. Your insides are going to sort themselves out, because that's the beauty of how we're created and our bodies are made. But when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to connecting on a sexual level, regardless of what it was like through pregnancy, because those hormones can be raging through pregnancy, right? And then there's other issues going on towards the end of pregnancy that make it more complicated. But you've just pushed a human out of you. How do you connect in a way that you maybe can feel comfortable or safe, secure, not in pain? What are some ideas that you have for that?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, because I've had lots of conversations with couples, because both of us were doulas, and with couples after, and I've actually had conversations with dads who they are very concerned about the
Especially
after.
if they've been in the birth.
If they've been there, if they've seen the area in a totally different way than they've ever seen it before, and real concern like that they're going to hurt their wife, or concerned that that area is now different in their eyes, like just they don't see it quite the same, and that can actually be a bit of a turn off sometimes for some dads, or for other dads a bit of a fear factor. So it can change on both parts, or only on one, or sometimes not at all, and it's fine. But I think for a lot of moms, some of the things that are really valuable is to learn Kegels, like to really learn how to exercise so that you're holding that area of muscle as if you're trying to stop peeing, and then releasing it. And there are you can Google it. There's a million different types of Kegel exercises, holding it, not holding it, quick, slow, all of that. And they're all good. Mm-hmm. And after you have a baby, and more so the more children you have, it's really important, not just for your sexual relationship, but for continence, and for, being able to not dribble every time you laugh, cough, jump on the trampoline with your kids, all those things. So it's important in every way, because that's part of your health. And I think that's something for moms that within just a few days of having a baby, you can actually start those. So I think the sooner that you do that, the sooner you start to feel a little more in control of your body, of how your body feels, of how it's functioning, that you can feel that there's response, that you aren't broken. Okay. Because I've heard that word a lot. And that your body will have a new normal. And often for many women, the new normal is not that far off the old normal. And sometimes it goes back totally to the old normal. So, yeah, exactly.
In my case, I remember sex was painful when we were first married. I had a hard time with that. And I remember going to see a gynecologist struggling with this forever. And it was one of the doctors we've worked with here at one of the hospitals, and didn't have a great reputation as an OB, but had a great reputation as a gynecologist. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to take away from this. But she basically just left me with, you'll be fine once you have your first baby. I'm like, great. But how do I get to that point? But it was true. In my case, it actually was. Once I had a baby, it changed it completely, and it made it a lot better. So that's a little bit of hope for anybody who maybe have dealt with, any issues like that. It oftentimes will make things a little easier too. So, yeah. And I think,
I think conversation, right.
There you go. See, we're related. I think that open conversation is important. Because if you don't know where your partner's at, like you said, if you don't know that your husband is completely freaked out by what he saw, right? Or is just feeling very nervous about hurting you or how your comfort or whatnot, that can change things completely. And guys are not always the best at explaining that, right? They don't want to sound silly or like they don't want to have sex, because that's just not normal for a guy. So it really comes down to a conversation, even in the weeks of healing, right? And just, finding what works for you guys as a couple and what meets each other's needs in a respectful way, but being open, because you won't get past that in a healthy way unless you do. It can kind of draw out right into issues later, even in your marriage, in your relationship, or in your whatever, if you don't have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that too, like right after, and like you're saying, in those weeks that you're healing, it's important to talk about what feels good and doesn't feel good to you, even just in touch, right? Just being cuddly or caressing and so on, because maybe your breasts are now off limits. Maybe you're feeling really sensitive because you are breastfeeding and you have a ton of milk, and it's not comfortable, or maybe your belly is still recovering and feels itchy or tender, or maybe you just don't like how it is right now because it's different for you. So having those conversations even then about like, this is how I'm feeling. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if this has changed, right? And finding those things out together. It can actually be kind of interesting because you are a different person in a lot of ways, and so is he, because you're now parents. And if you've never been that before, then this is a whole new set of people coming at a sexual relationship. Even though you had a sexual relationship, it's not the same people. Like in many ways, it's not. And so you need to figure out, who are you in this new relationship? Because yes, you're parents, but you still are a couple first, and your relationship and the strength of it is what your children's security is going to be dependent on. And so that has to be figured out.
Yeah. And it takes time. It's not a, hey, like, that's why I was always laughing at these little videos, because I'm like, it's not like the 6 week, you're free to go and life just, everything turns back on and you're ready to roll. That's not how it works. So yeah, I think it is really important for those open conversations. I read something once that I thought was really helpful, and it was talking about in the weeks as you're healing. And I mean, we talk about this a lot of times in our prenatal classes when we used to teach them, and encouraging, partners or dads, whatever, to be just kind of like the right hand of mom for those weeks, and just whatever she needs, just go for it. Not ignoring the fact that you have needs too, but taking those times, it's only for a few weeks, taking that time to get into a rhythm as a couple, as a parent, as a, right, getting to know your baby, all of those good things. And that's why I kind of like that 6 week of baby moon, just chill, just take life easy for those weeks. There's no pressure, no expectations. And even after you've been released from that, if you're feeling good, or maybe before that, but when you are feeling good, taking time to just have a date, go for a walk without baby, have someone look after baby, or with baby, whatever, but do something together as a couple that you can connect emotionally, because that's where it all starts. And you're sleep deprived and you're trying to figure this all out. So, whether it's cuddling on the couch and watching a movie and having those conversations, then, I like it when you hold me. I like it when you hold my hand, please don't touch my butt, whatever it is. But being brave enough to say that, and also being open and vulnerable enough between each other to say, hey, this isn't a personal thing to you. I'm not trying to be hurtful in any way, and doing it with respect and doing it kindly. It's actually, I've had some great experiences, and I'm sure you have too, great conversations with, clients and with couples over the years who have taught me things about that, about just going, wow, you guys did this really well. Like, you've done this well, you've figured it out, you've learned something new you both like. You've learned a couple of things you didn't even know beforehand you didn't like. So I think it's actually a great opportunity to up level that spice up your sex life a little bit as you go along too, which is good.
Yeah, I remember.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember a few couples that just did it so well. And one of the things I thought was really cool was this one couple who just got it, that the baby doesn't know you're doing it. That was the conversation. The baby doesn't know you're doing it. So the reality is, if you want to get in the shower together, just to have intimacy, and like even just to wash each other, and when mom's not, at that point yet that she's released to do anything, just to connect and have intimacy, you can put the baby right in their little seat in their chair in the bathroom while you're soaping each other's back. Like, that is a good thing. That gives you time together to connect and touch and and just enjoy each other's bodies, and mom to be able to let you as a dad see her body's different now, right? And be accepting of it and encouraging of it, and all of that. And same thing, like when it is time, if the baby's in the room, you're not scarring them for life if you decide to have sex in the room, right? Like, it's been interesting talking to people over the years, and how some did it so well and some feel bad because they felt they did it so badly. And all the things that you learn over that. And yeah, so I think it's neat when you hear a few people where it's like, wow, it's like, you guys really did do it well. You figured it out, and you were willing to experiment and explore and try something different because you were in new territory.
I love that. I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to tell you a really funny story, and it's only because you're my sister I can tell you this. So, because one day you're going to end up with a 13-year-old who now understands why there's a lock on your bedroom door, who gets up like last night, and at midnight decides he needs to get a glass of water, but the fridge light isn't on. I don't know what that was about. So he needs to come try to open your bedroom door and tell you something's wrong with the fridge. the light isn't on. So when he can't get your door open, he's getting a little frantic over why can't he get your door open? There's a lot of scrambling going on. And then the door opens and we have no clue how he opened it because it was locked. Anyway. That's the first time that's happened. And then there was a very awkward conversation this morning when he realized probably why the door was locked. So when they're babies, it's fine. Do your thing. Right. Even toddlers, man, like if they're sleeping, take the moment. It's nap time. Because when they're 13 and they know where babies come from, it all changes.
The whole other, yeah.
Oh my gosh, the poor kid.
That is hilarious.
He was a little traumatized. He then got up a second time and had to go get a Serenity capsule to put himself to sleep.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
I was like, and the fridge was fine. I don't know what was wrong with the fridge. We thought he was sleepwalking, honestly, because he does that. Anyway, that's my story.
So yeah, so at the young stage, you're not going to scar them.
Enjoy it. That's right. Yeah. You won't scar them until they're 13. And then apparently you do. Okay, I wanted to show you this because I think you've seen these, but I'm in love with these, and I never hold up products on my podcast, but I wanted to show these because these are the BeFit. It's hard to see with the light. This is called the BeFit Classic. There we go. And they literally look just like that. There's a big one and a small one. We talked about Kegels and even just like trying to find that part of your body again and for intimacy and whatnot. But these are specifically for Kegels. They just happen to be a little fun too. So there's the little size. And these come out. They're just a silicone cover and there's no seams or anything. They're fantastic. But it helps you. They're weighted. They're heavy. So it helps train those Kegel muscles that you can't feel. So you literally just put them up inside.
You do weights.
You're doing weights with your vagina weights. That's what I told my 9-year-old. That's what they were. She's like, I don't understand what they are. I said they're vagina weights to work.
Oh my goodness.
They work. Okay. They're freaking amazing. But on top of that, they are good for, again, just finding some, lighting up a bit of desire, finding some of those feelings again in that part of your body for ladies, especially. But like you said, just being able to connect in a touch way is so beautiful as a couple. So don't ignore or kind of overlook, because I will tell you, the prudish side of me for years was like, oh my gosh, I would never use something like that. But then I started talking to a pelvic floor therapist and learning more about what they actually do, because I have a prolapsed uterus and I needed to learn more about how I could help strengthen things in there. And this was one of the first things that came up. And I was like, really? That's okay. You have a tool for this? I don't have to try and visualize where things are. So that was a fun little one. So that's why we ended up bringing them into the Oil Baby shop, because I'm like, what the heck? This is brilliant. So that was my little plug for the best pelvic floor toy I've ever seen.
But it's true. It's like you really afterwards have a hard time knowing where that muscle is and finding it. And so having something that actually forces you to clench, right? And if you don't, it falls out. Like, it's awesome. It's brilliant. And I wish people talked more about pelvic floor health after, because have you ever heard of pelvic floor therapists before maybe the last 4 years, like 3 years, 4 years? And yet the need was huge. Like, I have tons of friends who are now my age now with kids that are in their teens who are still suffering and just never did anything in the beginning because there was nothing offered to them.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've even been talking lately too. There's a couple of friends I have had that they're my age, your age, and they never had children. They still have pelvic floor issues, whether it's through sports, doing aggressive sports as a child, or, trauma or whatnot. So it's really kind of a universal thing as we age, that those muscles do get kind of lax and they do need to be worked out. I love it. Good tips. Good advice. We could go on forever about postpartum. There's a million things on this topic.
There really are.
There totally is. And I'm excited because I do have a new friend here in our area who is a pelvic floor therapist who's going to be chatting with us at some point too. So get down and dirty with how to take care of your pelvic floor muscles even more so. All right. I'm going to stop there because, like I said, we could keep going forever. But some topics we have coming up, right? Let's give them a little teaser. Some of the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk more we are going to talk more about, sex life with kids as they get older and as you start to get older. I know we're going to talk more about perimenopause and, menopause and kind of heading into those years and what that looks like, things we didn't know. We'll definitely cover some pregnancy as well, because that was that's our field of expertise, both you and I. And beyond that, obviously, we've got lots more good stuff. But what I wanted to say was, if you have a topic that you think fits what your mama didn't tell you, then you need to send it in. So you can email it in. You'll see the links at the bottom. You can email those in, or you let either of us know, and we'll share, your ideas as we do these, and we'll come up with some good information for you as we go along, and probably some very personal stories as we go too. I expect one from you next time.
I'll think one up.
You're a good one. All right, awesome. Well, we will talk again soon. Thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Would you like to learn more? Find me on Instagram and YouTube at Mom Days Podcast.